How's it going? My name is James, and today I'm going to show you how I made this planter box. Come check it out. I'm going to begin this project by cutting what will end up being the edges of the box that are going to stand vertically. And to do this, I'll cut these boards to length in terms of how tall I want the box to be. And then once I've got these cut, I'm actually going to take these to the table saw, where I'm going to rip them not quite in half, but I'm going to choose a little bit off center, make sure I'm avoiding any knots or anything like that. And then once I've ripped these on that line that's just off center, I'm going to actually join each of those halves together at a right angle, and those are going to be the edges of the box. Now, to form these so that they'll actually wrap around the edges of the box looking like one coherent piece, what I'm going to do is take one that's thicker and one that's thinner, and I'm going to put them together just like this. I'll mark a line so that I can drill some pocket holes in there, and then I'll use pocket holes and also just some glue to join all of these together. Now, the way that pocket holes work is that they basically allow you to drill a hole into the wood at such an angle that when you go to put the screw in later on, it's going to attach into the other piece of wood, but it's not going to be visible depending on where you put them. So these are going to be the inside of the joint. So the way that they're going right now, it allows you to have some screws in there without being visible. So I finish up all those pre-drilled holes, and now it's just a matter of bringing the pieces of wood together. A little bit of glue on there, like I said, and then just a matter of driving the screws through from the back. And again, from the outside, it's not going to be visible whatsoever. I repeated the same process for all the edges, again gluing them and then screwing them in with the pocket holes. I found though that using the drill driver was a little bit aggressive and actually started to split the wood a little bit, so I ended up switching to a screwdriver, which took a little bit more time but just gave me a little bit more control as I was connecting these. And again, just repeated this for all four of the edges until they were all finished. Once I had finished the vertical pieces for the edges, it was time to start cutting the wood that would be used on the sides. And for this, it was a little bit of trying to figure out what dimensions would work well. Also, it was a little bit of just trying to figure out how much wood I actually had, as I was using some scrap wood for this project. Once I had finished cutting all those horizontal pieces, I ended up putting two of those vertical edges onto the bench and then just started laying those horizontal pieces in between two of them. And the idea here is just to get them all set up. I made it so that it was going to be 4 horizontal pieces high, and then it was just a matter of drilling those into those edge pieces that are going to be horizontal. And again, it was just a matter of putting a whole bunch of screws in there, making sure it was nice and secure, and then repeating that same process on another board in the same way. And then once that was done, it was a matter of putting 2 of those completed panels onto their sides and then connecting them in much the same way. The only difference was because the side panels were already standing vertically, there was a little bit less room actually to use the drill to actually get the screws in there. And so I kind of struggled with this for a little bit and then just ended up pre-drilling some holes just to make sure I wouldn't split out any of the wood at the very edges there. And that seemed to do pretty well to just kind of pave the way so that the screws could go in there without splitting the wood. Once I finished the third side of 4, again, it was just a matter of flipping everything over and then working on that final side. And once all 4 sides were completed, it was a matter of figuring out how to get some kind of bottom into this. This is the part of the project where you get to see some really fine craftsmanship. No, I'm just taking a hatchet to a bunch of scrap pieces of wood. But the idea here is I'm actually going to use these scrap pieces of wood to help with the bottom of the structure. And to do this, you can see here I'm attaching these pieces of scrap wood to 2 of the sides. So I'm going to do this on this side and then the opposite face as well. And the bottom pieces are actually going to span the distance and kind of sit on these tracks that are here. You can see in this shot that the tracks are actually going to be at a bit of an angle, so they're angled towards the middle. And the idea here is that they're going to help to drain all the water towards the middle, where I'm going to have a metal track that's going to be in there. And again, this is going to be on 2 opposite sides, so you're seeing now the opposite side that I was just working on. And the idea is that these mirror each other so that the boards can go across and be uniform, and you'll see that in just a second here. So what I'm doing now is just measuring the actual distance that I need to cut these, and so I make the cuts, and then it's just a matter of fitting these in here. And at this point I was kind of down to some of my last pieces of scrap wood, so I actually ended up using some pieces of wood that were different from each other, but that ended up being fine. And you can see here I'm just kind of laying these out, 3 pieces of wood on each side, and then in the middle I'm actually going to be running a piece of east trough that I had lying around, and the idea is hopefully that everything's going to drain towards the middle and then at an angle when I put the piece of eavestrough in there. Now before I actually attach the piece of eavestrough, I'm actually just going to screw some of these pieces of wood in. I actually didn't do this with all of them because I figured the weight of gravity would just hold these down. But the ones at the bottom of that slope, I decided I was going to attach. And then once I attached those, I was ready to start working with the piece of eavestrough. In an ideal world, I would have had a good pair of tin snips. I did not. I just ended up using some garden shears, which probably wrecked them pretty good. But it was able to do the trick. And you can see here, the idea is to have something metal at the bottom that's going to let the water drain out in a certain way. And here I'm just kind of shaping it with the hammer to make any rough edges, take those off there. At this point, I kind of changed plans a little bit and decided to flip this whole thing over and attach the eavestrough on the bottom. I didn't want the water to have to kind of go over that lip of the metal, and so I figured if I attached it at the bottom, that would eliminate that problem. Once that was in place, it was a matter of lining the sides with some clear plastic. I just had some of this lying around that was left over. And this is just to protect the sides of the box and make sure that it lasts long, as we have soil and water that's going to be going in here. Just kind of offers a layer of protection. It was just a matter of draping this over and then using a stapler and just kind of attaching it as best I could, cutting off all the excess on the sides, and then basically poking some holes in the very bottom so make sure that the water would actually drain through this into the eavestrough, and it seems to be working pretty well. And then once that was done, it was a matter of taking some landscape cloth and doing the same kind of thing, just draping it over and just stapling it to the sides. I ended up having to do this in a couple different sections, just the way that the cloth was shaped. It was not long enough to do it in one section. But again, the same thing, just stapling it to the sides, cutting off any of the excess, and then once I had finished that, it was pretty much ready to be taken outside and put to work. This is just going to sit in the corner of our deck on the side of our house. And it was just a matter of filling it up with some dirt from the garden, and to do this I just grabbed our recycling bin actually and just took a couple trips with that. You can see me spreading out with my foot here, and then I brought in some extra potting soil to use at the top, and then also just some tomato plants. I got some basil plants, some dill, some cilantro, and spread out some of the potting mix, and then it was just a matter of doing my best to spread out the soil and start planting some of these tomatoes first and then the rest of it as well. And again, this is my first time really trying to grow things in soil. We never have done a garden before or planter box like this, but it's actually been a lot of fun. There's been a bit of growth in this planter box since I first built it, and so it's kind of nice. We got some cilantro, some dill in the back there, some basil leaves, and we actually have some tomatoes that are starting to form. Although they're a little bit green still, there's quite a few of them popping up, so that's really exciting. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was helpful. Until next time, take care.